sure we could just talk for a while on that. It's quite a famous story, isn't it? So, we're looking at all of Matthew 21. We've been working our way through Matthew. And Matthew 21, I'm kind of thinking of it a bit like if you watch a Netflix series, it's like an 8-part series. I think this chapter is like part 6. Okay, so if this was a film and it was a murder mystery, this would be the point when they found the second body. If this was a romance, a rom-com, this would be the point when the ex-boyfriend or the ex-girlfriend turns up out of nowhere, I'm back, oh no, what's going to happen now? If this was a sci-fi and the aliens were somewhere in space, this would be the point when they landed on Earth and they captured the president. Okay, so there's a turning point here, and it makes you, what's going to happen next? There's going to be a conflict, there's going to be some stuff going on, and as we read the rest of Matthew this week, we'll see where this leads. Spoiler alert, it leads to the cross, I think we know that. So, Jesus has been wandering around Israel with his disciples. They've been having quite a good time for 3 years or so. Jesus has been preaching, he's been healing, he's been doing some amazing miracles, raising the dead, doing all kinds of stuff and teaching. And the disciples are just along for the ride and they're enjoying it. And then Jesus heads towards Jerusalem and he starts to tell his disciples, we're going to Jerusalem. This is where the religious leaders, the chief priests, the Pharisees, the scribes, the teachers of the law, they're going to kill me, basically. This is the plot, that's what's going to happen. And the disciples are like, no, that's not going to happen. Well, they're just not listening. They can't hear it. So this is the point when we get to Jerusalem, and it's all hotting up now. It's all kind of uphill. So you'll see in your Bibles, you can kind of follow it along. There's 6 sections, 6 scenes almost. And Matthew, when he wrote this gospel, he wrote it in one long story, one long narrative. He didn't write these little chapter headings. He didn't split it into little chunks. They're quite useful, they came later. But this is one continuous narrative. So we'll read chapter 21. It's got 6 scenes. I've got 6 little visuals. And we'll think about, there's 2 questions. Firstly, who is this guy? Who is this man, this Jesus? Who is he? What does he say and do? Who is he? And that you'll see that's the question in the first section. And also, what do we worship? What do we worship now? What are they worshipping there? What do we worship now? Okay, so for each of those 6 scenes, 2 questions. Okay, so first scene. Jesus arrives in Jerusalem on a donkey. And I thought, is this sacrilegious, using Eeyore? And then I thought, that's kind of the point. Okay, if you turn up on a donkey, you know you're going to look a bit stupid. This is deliberate. Jesus, I'm sure he could have got a horse if he wanted to. He had the connections. He could have found a horse. He deliberately chooses to come to Jerusalem on a donkey, with his legs dragging on the ground, looking a bit stupid. But he's still coming as king. And his followers and the people around him are shouting, Hosanna, as we heard. They're shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David, to the king. They see him as important in some weird way. He's not coming with an army. He's not coming to take over. But he is coming as king. Who is this guy? Where's he? And they're like, who is this guy? Where's the, like, oh, he's the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. Okay, whatever. Yeah, who is this guy? What do we worship? Do we worship power? Do we worship military might? Do we want someone to come and fix? And there's people within Jesus' followers who are like, we need you to smash the Romans, to make Israel great again, to get rid of the outsiders and sort this place out and make us in charge again. That's what we want. And he's not doing that. Do we worship power? Political power or any other sort of power? Do we want things to be done in the way we want them? Okay, scene 2. Oh yes, that's right. Jesus, the King, who comes in peace, he comes on a donkey. He's not here for violence. He goes into the temple. The first thing he does is smash the place up. What's going on? Who is this guy? So he turns over the tables and the chairs, he kicks the place up, there's money going everywhere. Who is this guy? What is he doing? Why is he here? And he says to them, this temple, this place, should be a house of prayer for all the nations. Everyone from anywhere should come here and be able to worship God. You guys have made it a den of robbers. Okay? You're more obsessed with the money than you are with worshipping God. What do we worship? Do we worship money? It's easy to worship. We need money. You can't survive without it, but is that our aim in life? Do we worship money? worship the temple building itself. Later on, a couple of chapters later, the disciples said, look, Master, look at this building, isn't it amazing? It looks really nice, doesn't it? Heaven's done it up, it's great. And Jesus is like, this whole thing is coming down. There will not be one stone on top of another. It will all be destroyed. Don't worship the building. We have a building now, it's a nice building, we've done nice things to it, we need to look after it. If we worship the building, we are in trouble. Don't worship the building, don't worship the money. Scene 3. You see that? It's a tree. It's supposed to be a fig tree, it's a palm tree. So, Jesus is commuting. This is like a week, a few days. It's leading to Holy Week. Jesus is commuting into Jerusalem every day. He's staying with some friends outside of Bethany. And every morning he walks in, and then in the evening he walks back out again with his disciples. And he walks in one morning, I think he hasn't had any breakfast, and he sees a tree, and it's a fig tree, and it's got leaves on it. So apparently fig trees, the fruit comes first, so when they've got leaves on, they should have fruit on. So he sees the tree, it's got leaves on it, he goes up to it, he looks at the fruit, there's no fruit on the tree. So Jesus curses the fig tree, and it withers. So in Mark's Gospel, he curses it, and then he comes back later and they see it's withered. Whether it happens straight away or not, different authors have different opinions. But he does something powerful here. And it seems a bit weird. Who is this guy goes around cursing fig trees? Is he just a bit hangry? Is he just, I didn't have any breakfast and I'm angry with you, fig tree? People have seen this as symbolic, because the fig tree quite often represents Israel and Jerusalem. And Jesus is looking at the tree, and it looks great. It's got leaves, but there's no fruit. And we said last week, Fraser was talking about fruitfulness. And we see earlier in Matthew's Gospel, John the Baptist says, produce fruit in keeping with repentance. Any tree that doesn't produce the fruit will be cut down and thrown in the fire. Jesus says it as well later on. This is quite a key thing. What's your fruit? What are you producing? So here's this guy. He's got some kind of spiritual power. He's got authority. He does miracles. And what do we worship? Now, can we get confused and start worshipping that? Simon the sorcerer kind of, I want to do magic tricks. We have to be careful about that. C4. I wasn't sure about this one. So Jesus goes into the temple and he meets the Pharisees and he's preaching and teaching, and they say, where does your authority come from? What's your symbol of status? Who gave you the right to be here? We're the local guys. We can tell you our ancestry back to Abraham. We have all power and authority. We're in charge. You are from nowhere, country bumpkin. Where's your authority come from? And Jesus does a thing he often does, answer the question with another question, and he says, well, where does John the Baptist's authority come from? And the people think John the Baptist is a prophet. So it's like the Pharisees don't want to answer that one. But the suggestion here is, who is this guy? He has authority, and his authority is not earthly authority. It's coming from somewhere else. Is it coming from God? That's what he's suggesting. That's what this story is suggesting. Who is this guy? What do we worship? Do we worship authority? Do we worship earthly authority? Do we worship a long line of important people who've all got a big name for themselves? Within a church, do we worship, the bishop? Do we worship the minister? We love you, Fraser. Fraser is not the Messiah, okay? It hurts to say it, he's not the Messiah. We need to not worship him, okay? It's an easy trap to fall into, but it is a possible one, okay? We need to not worship status. Who's got the biggest hat? Who's got the best chair? Who's in charge? Who's up above? Who's the idiot with the microphone who's talking? We need to not worship them, okay? So, number 5. 2 left. There's no panic, we're nearly there. So Jesus is still in the temple. He's telling 2 stories. He's telling them to the Pharisees and anyone else who's listening. The first story he tells is about 2 sons. There's a man who has 2 sons. And he says to the 2 sons, boys, I need you to go and work in the fields today for me. And the first son is like, yeah, Dad, of course I will. I love you, Dad, I'll do it. But he doesn't go. And the second son's like, I can't believe you've asked me again. I don't want to go. No, that's boring. But he does. So Jesus asks the obvious question, which of the 2 sons did what the father asked? The one who said he would, but didn't, or the one who said he wasn't going to bother, but did? And the Pharisees are like, well, obviously, the one who actually did what the Father wanted. And Jesus offers this devastating remark, which is eventually gets him killed, which is, you Pharisees, you're looking down on the people who you think are the lowest of the low, the scum, the tax collectors, prostitutes, the riffraff. But they are doing what God is asking. And you're not. You're the sons who are telling all the good stories and looking so great and being up the front and wearing great clothes, but you're not doing what God is looking for. So this leads into the final story. So who's this man and what do we worship? Think about this. Roll in with the next one. Final story is the big one. This is the kicker. This is the thing that gets him killed, essentially, his attitude. Kind of a nasty story. So, there's a guy, and he owns a vineyard. He buys it, and he sticks his flag on it, and he digs around it and makes it nice and makes it ready to grow grapes. And he's quite rich, so he hires out this vineyard to some local people who will look after it for him. He lives a way away, so he says, I'll pay you, you look after the vineyard, take the harvest in, when the harvest is in, give me the money, I'll come back. So he does. He's over here. He gets some people to look after the vineyard for him. The trouble is, the people he gets are pirates. They are rogues. They don't really care about this guy, and they want it for themselves. Pirate flag. So they kind of have a little mutiny, and they say, we're taking over this vineyard, it's ours now, you're not getting it back. And so the guy is far away, he sends a servant, says, can you go and collect the money from the harvest for the vineyard? And the servant comes back, and he's been beaten up. He's like, did you get the money? No, they beat me up. He sends another servant. The servant comes back, limping, even more beaten up. Did you get the money? No, they beat me up. Sends a third servant, he doesn't come back, because these guys have killed him. And they're like, this is ours now, we're going to live here, we're going to camp out, this is our vineyard. Now, the Pharisees listen to this story, it will be ringing alarm bells because there's things in the Old Testament, there's stories in Isaiah about God who has a vineyard. And so the man is seen as God and the vineyard is seen as Israel. So they're thinking, what's this about? Anyway, the man in the story says, well, one more thing, nuclear option, I'll send my son. They'll respect my son, he has my authority, he's going to inherit that vineyard one day, it's all going to be his, he is my right hand man, my representative. If I send him, they're going to have to listen to him, so he sends his son. And the pirates, or raiders, whatever you call them, the tenants, they say, look, it's the son, if we kill the son, we get the vineyard, we're going to keep it, so they kill him. So, Jesus' question, what's this guy going to do when he hears what's happened? What's he going to do when he knows they've killed his son and they've taken over the vineyard? And the Pharisees are like, well, obviously, he's going to be really angry, and he's going to remove these guys in the most forceful way, to take back his vineyard, and give it to someone else, and get someone else to look after it for him, because they messed it up, and they're not paying him what's his due. So, Jesus says, this is you guys, this is the Pharisees. So this is a story for us, well, what's all this relevant to us? This is a story for us now, especially those of us who've been in churches for a while, who like to think of ourselves as the good guys. The Pharisees think of themselves as the good guys. They think they are maintaining the religious tradition. They think they're doing what God wants. They think that they are looking after the vineyard wisely. And Jesus is saying, no, that's not what's going on here. And he is predicting his own death. He comes as a son who will be thrown out of the vineyard and killed. Who is this man? He's challenging authority. And when the Pharisees hear the story, they think, we have to kill him now. He's telling us we're not who we think we are. We think we're morally pure, we think we're righteous, we think we're doing what God wants. Jesus is saying, no, you've got it wrong. You're obsessed with money, you're obsessed with power, you want to be in charge, you're doing religion, but your hearts are far from me. Your hearts are far from God. So, who is this man? I don't know, he's a bit of an idiot, isn't he? I mean, he's walking into his own death deliberately. He's winding up the people who will kill him. He has something big to say about power, about authority, about religious authority, about how we live our lives. And what do we worship? It's very easy when we get to churches to get into the hierarchy, to get into the power, to get into the spiritual pride. We need to stay humble. And the longer we've been in churches, and the longer we've been, think of ourselves as Christian and religious, the more this is a danger for us. It's a serious story. So, who is this man? We'll come back to that. What do we worship? I'd like to just take 2 minutes and just kind of have a bit of silence and a bit of thinking that through, and a bit of prayer if you want to. So just get comfy, close your eyes, just think for a couple of minutes, what do we worship? So, we come before the God who knows us before we were born, the God who knew us in the womb, the God who knows everything we've ever done, the good, bad, the really ugly, and the God who loves us unconditionally, who sees us make mistakes, who sees us get it wrong, who sees sometimes we do it right and do it well and is pleased, but that love doesn't change. Like the best parent or the best relative, the one who loves us whatever we do, wherever we go. And so we just get out the table of our life with all the stuff on it and say, what do we worship? What do you want me to do with this, Lord? Is there something we need to let go of? Something we're holding really tightly that we need to just let go? Do we worship power, status, money, our own self-image, our own religiousness? What are the things that God is saying, I love you unconditionally, let go of that now, just let it go, you don't need it. Or maybe is there something that we're missing out on that's right in front of us? The Pharisees couldn't see what was right in front of them. Something that we could take up, something that's good, a challenge to us. What is Jesus saying to us? We just have a couple of minutes, just listening. Okay, so last question. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? This guy turns up on a donkey. This guy smashes the place up and says, you're not worshipping God here, you're just worshipping money. This guy who has the ability to do miracles. This guy who calls out religious hypocrisy and power. He's not worshipping any of these things himself, because he has let go of all power, all desire for money and riches and fame. And we can see that in the following week, where he ends up totally alone on a cross. So we're going to listen to a song now, which just talks about this. There's a little introduction in a minute that will explain about the heights and the depths, and about how Jesus is not standing on his own power or ceremony. He's prepared to go down to the depths.